911, what's your emergency? 911, what's your emergency?
Be advised, Car 4 has control of the pursuit. Proceed with caution.
Hello, everyone. Good morning from wherever you are watching. This is my first morning live stream. And so I am excited about that and hope that some of the viewers who have been contacting me about trying to do live streams earlier in the day will be happy with this live. I wanted to say that I hadn't decided for sure on my schedule, but I do believe that this will be it, and I will be going live on Tuesdays at 11 Central Standard Time. Hey, Lisa, good to see you. Thank you for being here. So I really, like I said, appreciate everyone who's stuck by me. And there's a lot to get into today. There's a lot happening with Delphi. There's a lot of activity on the case, so I wanted to talk about that. And there has been news on the Kagan Klein case as well. So let's just jump right into it. First of all, regarding the Delphi case, there have been there's been some activity the last few days. Okay, so it looks like there was a notice. I'm sorry, in the Keegan Klein case. I apologize, guys. Got to get my brain functioning. There was a media request placed of a media request for cameras in the courtroom. And this was requested by WTHR Channel 13 out of Indianapolis and Court TV. And they notified counsel of both of these requests, and it was denied today by the judge. Timothy Spar is the judge who is overseeing the case for Kagan Klein, and he says that he is denying the media request for cameras in the courtroom. The media and the public continue to be subject to the pretrial courtroom management and decorum orders entered in this case on October 17th of 2022. So there will be no televised coverage of Kagan's case. I don't find it surprising, honestly. I know that the Supreme Court in the state of Indiana allowed the judges to make the decisions on their own cases on whether or not they were going to allow cameras in the courtroom. But this particular judge said no to Kagan's case. There will be no cameras in the courtroom. I will not be at all surprised if this is what happens with Delphi as well, even though Francis Gull was one of the judges that actually tried out cameras in the courtroom. I wouldn't be surprised if this happens with his case, with Richard Allen's case as well. I agree with you, Lisa. I don't have a problem having cameras in the courtroom at all. But I really feel that sometimes when we have cameras in the courtroom, it can really become a media kind of circus around the case, which is something that I don't want to have happen with either of these cases. But I understand that the public wants to know what's happening in some of these trials. And obviously, people all over the world are interested in these cases. So they can't get to where the location to get a seat in the courtroom. So I totally understand why people want to see it, for sure. And another thing about being able to witness it and watch the proceedings, people learn how court proceedings work, and you really get to see the evidence and you get to see the facts of the case, which, you know, a lot of times we don't get to see all of the evidence because they don't show it. And the other thing that you don't get to see is you do not get to see the jurors, and you don't get to see the jurors' reactions to things. And those are important, in my opinion. So that's the update on Kagan. For everyone who ends up watching my replay, thank you so much for doing that and for being here. If anyone has any questions about anything I'm going to cover today, please drop them in the comments below. I try to answer most every comment at this point on my channel, and I would be more than happy to try to answer any questions that people may have. Moving right along, I wanted to, we're going to talk about that in a little bit. I have a lot to share with you guys today, but we'll just have to get through it, I guess, because there's a lot. I don't know if you guys have heard or not, but there is a mother in Utah. Hey, Outback, how are you? Good to see you. She is a Mormon mother, and she has been accused of poisoning her husband with fentanyl-laced Moscow Mule. And what is interesting about this is that she wrote a book, a kid's book, a bereavement book, a month before she was arrested for his murder. Hey, Melissa, good to see you, my dear. He told friends if anything happened to him, it would be her that killed him. So Corey Richens, 33, is accused of murdering her husband, Eric, who was 40, in their home in Kamas, a town near Park City, Utah, last March. So in March of 2022. And she went on to write a children's book on grief and how children should handle grief. Police believe that she gave him this lethal dose of fentanyl disguised in a Moscow Mule cocktail. And yes, Melissa, it will be Tuesday mornings now instead of Tuesday night. In the weeks and months before, she tried to make herself the sole beneficiary of his life insurance policy. He had changed his will and his power of attorney to give his sister full control, and was even worried that his wife was trying to kill him, according to a police search warrant. Corey remains in the custody of Summit County Sheriff's deputies awaiting her next court appearance. And just last month, she appeared on a local TV station to promote her book. It's called Are You With Me? Video of that appearance shows her referring to her husband's death as a shock and talking wistfully about how she was guiding their 3 sons through grief. My husband passed away unexpectedly last year. March 4th was a 1-year anniversary for us. He was 39. It completely took us all by shock, she said. We have 3 little boys, 10, 9, and 6, and my kids and I kind of wrote this book on the different emotions and grieving processes that we've experienced in the last year. She said she was motivated to write this book after searching Amazon and Barnes and Noble and finding nothing to help them cope. There's tons of books on grief, tons of books for kids. I went on Amazon and Barnes and Noble to try to find something to help us cope at night. Nights are the hardest. I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night, and I couldn't find anything that suited them. So I was like, let's just write one. Richens had told police she had performed CPR on Eric after finding him unresponsive in their home. But the fire crew and medics who responded to the scene said that was highly unlikely, as there was blood coming from his mouth. Her arrest came 2 months after that of Mormon dentist Jim Craig, who is suspected of poisoning his wife to death in Colorado. In the years before his death, Eric told his family that he feared his wife was trying to kill him. There were 2 occasions when Eric became violently ill after having drinks or dinner with his wife. One of Eric's 2 sisters told police he had called her 3 years ago from Greece, where he and Richens were on vacation together. He claimed Richens had given him a drink that made him violently ill and said he believed she had tried to kill him. In January of 2022, she changed Eric's joint life insurance policy, which he shared with his business partner, Cody Wright, so that she was the only beneficiary, a warrant states. When the insurance company told the partners who own the business and CE and Stone Masonry of the charge, they were able to change it back. After finding out that Richard had tried to change his life insurance policy, Eric changed the beneficiary of his will and his power of attorney to his sister without telling his wife, because he was scared she might kill him for the money. This is what the arrest warrant states. But a month later, court documents show that on Valentine's Day last year, Eric suffered an allergic reaction following a meal with Richens. He could not breathe and passed out after using an EpiPen and taking Benadryl. Court documents say Richens had bought $900 worth of fentanyl pills from an acquaintance before the Valentine's Day meal, and 2 weeks later, she asked for $900 more. Days later, Eric died of an overdose. Following Eric's death, Richens had claimed she had an addiction to pain medicine in high school, but there was no substance abuse issues since. But friends and family told police they said they hadn't had any idea of Eric being addicted to any form of medicine, and officers did not find any painkillers in the family home. In addition to the murder charge, Richens also faces charges involving the alleged possession of GHB, a narcolepsy drug frequently used in recreational settings, including dance clubs. The charges are based on an officer's interactions with Richens that night and the account of an unnamed acquaintance who claims to have sold her the fentanyl. 2 months ago, Richens promoted her children's book on local television and told a segment called Good Things Utah that she had written it to help her 3 boys deal with the grief of losing their father. So that is a very interesting story coming out of Utah. Very sad. He even suspected that that was something that was happening. So in the Idaho murder case, parents of slain University Idaho student honor Ethan with Ethan's Smile, which is a tulip mix. I talked about this late last fall, early January, when the family was talking about doing this. Ethan worked in summers at a tulip farm, and in fact, he worked a lot at this tulip farm. And they just decided that it was something that they wanted to do for him. One of the coworkers that he worked with thought that it was a really great idea. So the family of Ethan Chapin, who was brutally stabbed to death in a house near the University of Idaho last November, found this unique way to keep his memory alive. And it's in a tulip field north of Seattle. And I just think it's an absolutely amazing thing that they've done. So a tulip mix appropriately named Ethan's Smile was created by Tulip Valley Farms through friends who knew him through the annual local tulip festival. And now the mix named for the University of Idaho freshmen will benefit other students via a foundation that has been set up in his memory. The white and yellow tulips in the mix symbolize Ethan's bright and welcoming personality. The white reminds us of his teeth and his smile, and the yellow is bright and cheery and means friendship, said Stacy Chapin, his mother. It is very, very fitting to have known Ethan. That's all he ever did for us, was make us smile all the time. Ethan had a great smile, smiled all the time, said Jim Chapin, Ethan's father. Ethan was one of a set of triplets who all attended the University of Idaho together. He was majoring in recreation, sport, and tourism management. He and his brother were both members of the Sigma Chi fraternity. He touched more lives in his 20 years than most people touch in a lifetime. He was kind, he was inclusive, and everybody was welcome, says Stacy Chapin, Ethan's mother. Washington's Skagit Valley, 90 miles north of Seattle, where Ethan grew up and the Chapins still live, is the heart of the nation's tulip industry. I never knew that. I never knew that that's where our tulips in our country reside. Its annual tulip festival draws thousands to see the colorful blooms. He parked cars, took out trash cans, and sold tulips with his brother and sister Hunter and Maisie. His family created Ethan's Smile Foundation to raise money for college scholarships for students in the Skagit Valley through the sales of Ethan's namesake tulip bulbs and other merchandise. So far, the foundation has sold over 83,000 tulip bulbs to be planted in gardens, 1,300 sweatshirts, and 750 Ethan Smile fresh-cut bouquets. The Chapins say that the support that they have received in starting the foundation and offering people a way to help is helping them cope with the pain of never seeing their son smile again. I mean, I guess my honest answer is you wish you had it back. I don't know. It was an amazing 20 years we had with him, Stacy Chapin said. Chapin, along with his girlfriend Xana Kernodle and her roommates Madison Mogan and Kaylee Gonsalves, were stabbed to death at a house located on King Street in Moscow, Idaho, early in the morning of November 13th, 2022. On December 30th, a suspect, Brian Koberger, was arrested and charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. Koberger's trial is scheduled for June of 2023. I thought that was a touching story about how well Ethan's Smile tulips are doing. I just thought this was really interesting. Okay. Hey, Ray, how are you? Hi, Deb. Yeah, no kidding, Lisa. Not killing their father would have been helpful. Yeah, rather than writing a book. Hey, Jill, how are you? Good to see you. Hey, Mitzi, good to see you. Hey, Butterfly Kisses. How are you? So it's good to have you guys all here today. Always good to see you guys. Some of these stories are just incredible. So I thought that we would cover this because I'm going to talk about the Austin serial killer case again today. We've covered this a couple times on recent lives. We've been talking about it. Some guy, some businessman on TikTok has claimed that he has cracked the alleged serial killer case in Austin. He's being accused of using these murders to promote his TikTok account. The grift always shows itself. 9 bodies have now been pulled out of Lady Bird Lake in Austin, Texas, since the summer of 2022. But there's a lot more than that. It goes back to 2014, as we talked about the other night. Some people think that these deaths are the result of a serial killer that's on the loose in this city. And it's been proliferated on social media. And we've been talking about it. And I've been looking at some of the data of these killings. And I have to say, I don't understand why law enforcement seems to think that there's nothing related here. These are a lot of dead people. And there's something going on. I mean, if people are drowning at this rate in this lake, then there's something wrong. Seriously. So this TikToker's name is Ken Wax, and he claims that he has cracked this supposed Austin killer case, if there even is one. But many on the app say that Wax's observations about the developing story don't add up, and that he's posting about the case to peddle sales for his TikTok. He lives in Chicago and has over 1 million followers on TikTok. He began posting these theories about the deaths on April 4th when he stitched, and I'm not sure what that means because I'm not a big TikTok user. I watch TikTok, but I don't post to TikTok. So he stitched Austin-based creator Nick Casablancas' video, which explains that multiple bodies had been found in Lady Bird Lake, which Casablancas and many others think is the work of a serial killer. I'm doing really good, Ray. Thank you so much for asking. Hey, Thistle, how are you? Welcome. In Walk's TikTok, he says that the discovery of multiple bodies in bodies of water is part of a national problem because bodies have been found in Chicago, Pittsburgh, Wisconsin, Minneapolis, and other cities, and that he is gathering information to give to the FBI. I'm in the serial group in Austin, Wax says of his collaboration with Casablancas. I have evidence. I know what's going on, and it's so big, it's so deep, it's really wild. In follow-up TikToks, Wax asks for viewers to send him any information they have about bodies found in Lady Bird Lake and shows maps of cities he made that show where bodies of missing persons were found. He also claims that he's working with multiple private investigators in Austin and that the murders are the work of a team of killers rather than a single killer. The city's police department issued a statement on April 3rd stating that there was no evidence to support foul play in the deaths of the people found in Lady Bird Lake. The Austin Police Department did not immediately respond to, news media outlet requests for comments. Texas Monthly recently reported that many of the claims spreading online supporting the serial killer theory simply aren't true, and that amateur investigators are actually frightening people and getting in the way of police investigations. However, Wax remained on the case. His investigating work intensified on April 23rd when he claims that a private investigator showed up at his apartment with no prior warning and asked him to be part of the team investigating the deaths of the bodies that were found in Lady Bird Lake. Now, I have to say, guys, I think it's odd that a private investigator would just show up on someone's doorstep and ask them to join an investigative team. That just does not sound right at all. I'm going to help them with a lot. I'm going to help them a lot with their tech stuff, Wax says of the investigating team, with the map building, with the resource gathering, and the data collection stuff. While Wax had received support from viewers and commenters on his initial videos about the existence of an Austin serial killer, many found his claim about being approached at his home by a private investigator suspicious. Bingo. Civilian brought into an investigation. I would like the scallop commented on Wax video. Sounds super real. This is going to be the next KONY 2012. At Catboy Hannibal Lecter wrote, I'm questioning everything, including you, at Wow You Don't Say, Huh? Commented. Wax additional TikToks about an Austin serial killer have garnered more backlash. In one, he says he's cracked the case and is working with Kevin Gannon, a retired police officer who has dedicated years to investigating a supposed string of murders by the smiley face killers. In another, Wax talks about the investigation alongside an app for which he is the chief marketing officer in a paid advertisement he made for a project management software company. Finally found some more delusional than me at Sofad_19 commented on Wax video about working with Gannon. The grift always shows itself at some point. At KT Fun Times, I Am Racing commented on Wax paid advertisement. Meredith Lynch, a TikToker who makes content about celebrity brands, has been at the forefront of attempting to debunk Wax claims. In her TikToks about Wax, she says he is writing fan fiction about his life and plugging his own app at the same time. Lynch also shows screenshots that Wax posted on his Instagram story claiming that he caught 2 murderers already. It's awful that people have been murdered, Lynch says in a TikTok, but Ken Wax has not caught 2 murderers. She also says that she doesn't believe Wax is rooted in reality and that his videos include many mentions of his app because they are reprehensible marketing strategies. Lynch also shows a post which looks to have since been deleted on an investing website that states that Faxx mention of the app in his unrelated TikTok videos boosted the app's funding. Faxx has created a marketing strategy where they are profiting off going viral by talking about people's absolute tragedies that they don't really have anything to do with, other than the fact that they want people to download their app. In response to Lynch's videos and other backlash he received, Faxx posted a TikTok on Tuesday apologizing to the families of these victims for mentioning his app in his videos about murders. I acknowledge that it was insensitive for me to reference my startup on those two occasions in posts relating to this case. I made a mistake by intersecting those two parts of my life. I brought this up because this is one of the things that we hear about so often in true crime. It's like, I don't know, I've always said this, and I will continue to say this. When you are covering true crime and you are talking about these cases, no matter who it is or what it is, there's ethics that should come along with it. And you have to remember that there are victims, families that are suffering enormous heartache and sadness. Hey, Dave, how are you, my dear? So we just need to remember that and know that there are people out there creating content around true crime stories, and it may not always be for the best intention, and that it can actually, hurt cases. I will tell you that Austin police pulled a car from Lady Bird Lake this week, which was interesting. They pulled the vehicle out of the water on Monday from the downtown stretch of water that we've talked about, where the bodies of at least 4 men have been discovered this year alone. There was no one inside the car found Monday, according to local reports, but it was photographed riddled with bullet holes after they hauled it onto dry land. Police initially responded around 2:30 a.m. for reports of a shooting near the Festival Beach boat ramp. That's less than 3/4 of a mile from the southern end of Rainey Street, home to the popular strip of bars where several men have been found deceased in the lake, and where they had last been seen. On Monday, May 1st, at approximately 2:03 a.m., Austin Police Department officers responded to a shooting call at the 2100 block of Jesse Segovia Street and located a car in the water. Austin police told Fox News Digital, "This is an active investigation. We do not have any more information to release at this time." A dive team returned after sunrise and police pulled the vehicle out of the water, but there was no one inside. Police recently increased their presence on Rainey Street, and Austin officials have also begun discussing ways to make the waterfront more safe, including adding lights to the trails there and increasing park ranger patrols. They have also installed temporary fencing following several public meetings where residents voiced concerns about safety along the edge of the water. Austin police have said they do not have any evidence of a potential serial killer on the loose in Austin. For weeks, they've been saying this publicly, that they've not uncovered any evidence of foul play in any of these deaths, but they continue that the investigations remain active. However, many Austin residents, as well as independent investigators and web sleuths alike, are arguing that the number of bodies that have been found so close to one another is more than just a coincidence, especially due to the distance between the strip of bars on Rainy and the waterfront itself. The edge of Lady Bird Lake is about a block and a half from the strip and would require climbing over a fence and going down a trail to reach it. Austin police identified the latest victim as John Christopher Hayes Clark, age 30, and he was pronounced dead at the scene near a dam about 2 miles downriver from where the others were found, closer to Rainy Street. Police found Jason John 30 dead in the Lady Bird Lake in February, a week after he was last seen on Rainy Street. And Clifton Axtell, age 40, was identified as the man found deceased on March 5th. Jonathan Honey, age 33, was found on April 1st, a day after he was last seen at a food truck on Rainy Street. Stretching back through 2022, local reports indicate as many as 8 men may have been found dead under similar circumstances. Meanwhile, concerns of roofie attacks have swirled around the bar scene in Austin. Such drugs, which incapacitate victims, have been used to commit robberies for years, but a new high twist was recently discovered in New York City. Police there have announced multiple indictments and arrests in conjunction with a series of robberies that involve drugging victims at bars and then using facial recognition technology to unlock their phones and drain their bank accounts. Several victims have died as a result of overdosing on the drugs that was used to incapacitate them, according to New York Police Department police detectives. Separately, the Austin deaths share eerie similarities to claims of a potential group of smiley face killers who some investigators believe may have been responsible for dozens of drownings of young men in the Midwest between the late 1990s, or beginning in the late 1990s. Residents were also monitoring the case of another missing man, Joel DeRusha. Police told Fox News Monday his remains were located in the 500 block of Thompson Lane this Thursday morning. He was located 9 miles away from Rainy Street, not in or near the water, and police said they found no evidence of foul play based on evidence uncovered so far. So yet another deceased person. But I do agree, though, they need to be looking into this because it just seems ridiculous that they don't have. I agree with you, Thistle. I think that they should have CCTV in that area. And if they're going to have this many people drowning in this lake, then they need to have cameras on that trail down by the lake to find out what the heck's going on. Because it just doesn't make any sense. I just think it's more than just a coincidence, is what I'm trying to say. And it's terrorizing the city of Austin. They're living in fear and terror as more people are being pulled out of this lake. And hold on a second. Okay. I was gonna see about opening it. Hold on one second, guys. Sorry. Quiet. Okay, there it is. I'm going to show you a picture so you guys can get an idea of what it looks like. Let me share my screen with you. So that's a picture of the lake. And since 2014, there's been a lot of people that have died that were in the bars and then died here. Now, I'm not saying that all of these may be due to a serial killer. What I'm saying is that they need to be investigating it. And I'm not so sure they are, because just because you have these bodies that don't have signs of trauma doesn't mean that they're not being drugged in some manner. And are these, I mean, what better way for a serial killer to get away with murder than to drug someone with fentanyl or use fentanyl and then just call it a drug overdose? I mean, seriously, they need to be looking into this. I feel for these families terribly. Residents of Party Hardy, Austin, are living in terror as a body believed to be the 8th victim of a serial killer, chillingly dubbed the Rainy Street Ripper, has been fished out of Lady Bird Lake. He was fished out near Longhorn Dam on April 15th, and thousands of residents believe he's another victim of this person's bloody rampage. Again, the police are saying that's not true. They're poo-pooing the theory of a serial killer. And they said that there's nobody prowling the city and murdering young men. But there are some common elements to these deaths that cannot be denied. The victims are in their 30s, frequented Austin's bustling Rainy Street, a favorite after-dark hotspot lined with bars, food trucks, and eateries, and were later found dead in the lake. So, I mean, you just can't deny the obvious. Hey, Grizz, how are you, my dear? Good to see you, as always. Welcome. So that's what's going on in Austin. You know, never a dull moment there. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today is it's been a really busy week and weekend again for crime in this country. And, you know, I obviously I monitor that because of having a true crime channel. I'm constantly looking at what's going on in crimes in the country. And, you know, I'm not going to get into politics on my channel. I absolutely refuse to get into politics, but we have to address this because I can't go without talking about this. We had another mass shooting over the weekend in Texas. You've all heard about it. There's no way that anybody that's living in this country can't hear about these things. They're everywhere on the news. We have little children killed again this time. Not that it's, you know, any worse than anybody else, but when we have tiny children losing their lives to this gun violence is just beyond me. I just don't understand. So many people have been left wondering why there are so many mass killings in the United States. Over the past 4 months, you guys, 4 months and 6 days, 4 months and 6 days of this year alone, 115 people have died in 22 mass killings. An average of 1 mass killing a week. More than 5 years after this man's son was gunned down in the deadliest mass shooting in modern U.S. history, Richard Berger still asks the question, why? Why Stephen? Why Stephen Berger was killed the day after celebrating his 44th birthday? Why did the gunman rally bullets over the Las Vegas Strip in 2017, turning a country music festival into a bloodbath? Why the massacre's death toll didn't shock U.S. leaders into doing more to prevent that kind of violence from happening again and again? Why? It's just a huge hole in our hearts, Berger said. We just don't know, and we just don't know what to say. For the Bergers, the families of the other 59 victims in Vegas, and relatives and friends of countless others slain in mass killings across this country in the years since, the questions loom large, just as large as they did back then. They're still just as large as when the crimes actually happened. Yet the carnage continues. Over the first 4 months and 6 days of this year, 115 people have died in 22 mass killings. Let that sink in. An average of 1 mass killing a week. And that includes the bloodshed Saturday at a Dallas area mall where people were just shopping, out with their family and friends, having a good time. Who goes shopping and think they're going to die? Who does that? I don't think any of us, right? Hey, Frank Meister, how are you? Good to see you. So good to see you. Eight people were fatally shot on Saturday at the Dallas area mall. And now the total represents the highest number of mass killing deaths this early in the year since at least 2006. And the Associated Press's data has shown that the deaths have already been happening at a record pace before the horror unfolded in Texas. Experts point to a few contributing factors: a general increase in all type of gun violence in recent years, the proliferation of firearms amid lax gun laws, the effects of the coronavirus pandemic, including the stress of long months in quarantine, a political climate unable or unwilling to change the status quo in meaningful ways, and an increased emphasis on violence in U.S. culture. Such explanations are little comfort, not only to the families ripped apart by these killings, but to Americans everywhere who are reeling from these cascading collective traumas of mass violence. This year's killings have happened in different ways, from family and neighborhood disputes to school and workplace shootings, to explosions of gunfire in public places. It absolutely breaks my heart. From a mother who has buried a child, I can't imagine every time this happens, another mother is out there having to bury a child. They've taken place in rural as well as urban settings. Sometimes people knew their killers and sometimes they did not. The bloodbaths are defined by the FBI as mass killings when the events involve 4 or more fatalities within 24 hours, not including the perpetrator. The Associated Press, along with USA Today, tracks and compiles extensive data on these violent attacks in partnership with Northeastern University. Yeah, Thistle. You guys had a mass shooting and did something about it and haven't had one since. The Las Vegas shooter's motive remains unknown even now. The high-stakes gambler was apparently angry over how casinos were treating him despite his high roller status, but the FBI has never uncovered a definitive reason for the slaughter that ensued that day, which ended with more lives lost than in any single mass killing in decades. Contributing to 2023's steady drumbeat of death, the grisly murder-suicide in Utah that left 5 children, their parents, and their grandmother dead just days into the new year. The fatal shooting of 6 people, including 3 9-year-old children, at an elementary school in Nashville. Back-to-back rampages in California at dance studios and mushroom farms, and the mall shooting in Allen, Texas on Saturday, when authorities say this gunman stepped out of his car and immediately started shooting people. Yet, while these tragic events garner an outsized amount of attention in the news media and public's mind, they represent only a tiny fraction of overall gun deaths, which is sad. Far more frequent are fatal shootings involving fewer than 4 people and deaths from domestic violence. And then there are the suicides, which make up more than half of the 14,000 gun deaths so far this year. And that's according to the Gun Violence Archive, which monitors news media and police reports to compile data. Mass killings spark the deepest fear in most people's hearts. And it's understandable because our safety has been taken away. We don't feel safe anymore in anywhere. Women haven't felt safe forever. But men are starting to realize that you're not safe anywhere. People around this country are sending our kids to school, and you have to worry about if they're going to get shot. And I'm not talking just about our teenagers. I'm talking about our little kindergartners, our first graders, our second graders. My God, they've come out and made backpacks now out of Kevlar. The fact is, though, they're less common than other gun deaths. But the mass killings keep happening. 20 years after Columbine, 10 years after Sandy Hook, 5 years after Las Vegas, and less than a year after massacres at a supermarket in Buffalo, New York, and an elementary school in Uvalde, Texas, here we are. Which leads us back to the same question that I asked at the beginning of this. Why? People who actually study violence for a living are perplexed by the sustained pace of this brutality. We have plenty of examples of things that seem to be at the breaking point in this country. A former FBI executive, Catherine Schwait, said she created the agency's active shooter protocol after Sandy Hook. When I was asked to work on this in 2013, I didn't ever imagine 10 years later I'd still be working on the same thing. It will take years, if it's even possible, for researchers to pinpoint what's behind the drastic increase in gun violence. Advocates say there are measures that could perhaps avert such crimes. Firearm reform and weapons bans are among them, but there's more that still needs to be done. That's not the cure-all for this. Obviously, there's little appetite on Capitol Hill to implement any firearm reform or weapons bans. I think the United States has a relationship with guns unlike any other country in the world, said Kelly Drain, a research director for the Giffords Law Center to Prevent Gun Violence. These events are a consequence of our failure to put in place preventative measures. And we all know that the current president is an ardent advocate of stronger gun control, but he is frustrated with Congress' unwillingness to pass a ban on semi-automatic rifles in the face of the powerful gun lobby led by the NRA. Lawmakers did pass what for them marked a milestone in gun violence that toughens background checks for the youngest buyers, keeping firearms from more domestic violence offenders, and help states use red flag laws that enable police to ask courts to take deadly weapons away from people who show signs of mental illness or signs that they could turn violent. And that bill was signed into law last year. The legislation and other measures have done little to slow the pace of violence, though, or alleviate the nation's pain, which has been further exacerbated by the pandemic, climate change, and the racial reckoning that we saw in this country after George Floyd's murder by police. These tragedies compound one after the other, making it almost too much to bear, said Roxanne Cohen Silver, a psychology professor at the University of California, Irvine, who studies coping with traumatic life events. These mass killings, Silver noted, are just another tragedy on top of all the other psychological and emotional challenges that we have. Stephen Berger's father, Richard, who is now 80 years old, he spends his days with his grandchildren. One is a soccer goalie who reminds him of Steve, who had a passion for basketball. Their family awards annual athletic scholarships at Stevens High School. Berger watches the teenagers as they approach the next phase of their young lives, flush with promise and full of life, while his own son is dead. And 5 years later, he is still wondering why. And I do have to say, you guys, it seems like we're becoming, immune to these shootings. It's like they happen so often that we're just becoming numb to them. And I am so sad for the victims and their families, because it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter the arguments about why this is happening or how to fix it. They have to deal with the death and the burial and the loss and the empty chair forever. Oh my gosh, Dave, I'm telling you, I was floored to hear that he ran towards him and was able to stop him. I mean, Lisa, I hear you. I mean, I understand that mindset. And that's true, Mitzi. That's what bothers me. Everybody wants to run out and get guns, but nobody wants to learn how to use them and then keep them out of the hands of those who shouldn't have them. Because having guns comes a responsibility, and not leaving them around loaded where children especially can get access to them and go into their school and shoot their teacher. I mean, my God, This is the kind of stuff that's happening, you know? It's sad what's happening out there. And like I said, when you read about a father who shielded his wife and 3-year-old son by laying on top of them, but it did no good. They all 3 died because they all 3 were shot. It doesn't, you can talk about it until you're blue in the face, but when you're the Navy veteran who approached that scene, that tried to help those people, I saw his interview, and he's been to war and he's seen the battlefield. And he said it's nothing when you see a little child that's been blown away by a gun. So I just wanted to get that out there because I'm not going to ignore it. I'm not going to not talk about it because it needs to be talked about. So moving right along, this was, I thought, an interesting story, you guys. And we are always, you know, covering Delphi and covering, you know, what went on with the Kagan Klein case is coming up with the CSAM and the, you know, child sexual abuse material that's out there rampant, and these predators that are preying on our children. Well, get this story. A high school coach has admitted to hiding cameras in locker rooms for nearly 2 years. In Janesville, Wisconsin, a Wisconsin high school coach accused of planting a camera in a girls' locker room estimated he had been secretly recording students for 2 years, police revealed on Monday. The Craig High School coach, identified by officials as Brian Kitzman, estimated that approximately 18 students were recorded in that time span. Janesville Police Chief David Moore said during a news conference with the school district superintendent. Moore noted his investigators are still determining how many students were actually caught on camera during that time. And investigators continue to review footage. The police department said additional families of potential victims will be notified. It is not lost on us the breach of trust that has occurred, but what we can offer is a thorough and prompt investigation, a transparent investigation, Moore said. Moore described the recordings as crimes of opportunity, and students were not specifically targeted. He said Kitzman would find places where he could put cameras in the locker rooms and hide them there. In one instance, a camera was found after a student spotted her towel, which had been missing for weeks, Friday morning in a locker that was secured by a Craig High School administrative lock. When a high school staff member helped get the towel, a GoPro camera was located as well. The camera was turned over to the school resource officer, and within a few hours, police were called, and police realized what was going on, and the suspect was identified. Kitzman was arrested within a half an hour while boarding a bus where he was headed to a track meet. He was booked at the Rock County Jail on counts of possession of child pornography, violation of privacy, and representations depicting nudity of minors. Janesville School District Superintendent Mark Holtzman indicated his district now has 2 priorities, which include supporting the students and cooperating with the police investigation. Holtzman said the district has been working hard to offer support for its students and has increased what is available for them. He also assured families a search was conducted to ensure there were no more cameras. Kitzman who has been a school district of Janesville coach for multiple sports since 2004, is on administrative leave. Administrative leave, really? Moore explained. He said the district will have to wait for its investigation to end before making any decisions on his employment. And so it goes, guys. It's just another predator. I hear you, Ray. You got to teach them to respect them and never point it at someone unless you intend to shoot them. Let's see. Oops. Oh, sorry, guys. So it's been 10 years since the killing of Karen Canistaro, and her family is still looking for answers. 10 years ago today, Elmira resident Karen Canistaro left her parents' house after dinner and never returned. To this day, family and police are still trying to figure out what happened to her. To mark the 10 years since her passing, family and friends gathered today to help hang reward posters around the Elmira area. Jolyn Rice, CEO and founder of Cold Case Advocacy, was among those who volunteered to hang reward posters. If we can show up and show that support so that people remember Karen, they care about this case, they want to see it solved, then we're going to be there. So it means a lot to me and my husband to be here today, said Rice. Karen's body was found in a secluded area in Newtown Creek. To this day, a cross is in the place where her body was found that morning. This year would be Karen's 55th birthday. She now has 4 grandchildren. Her sisters, Mary and Kathy, have vowed to never stop searching for their baby sister's killer or killers. The Bellinger family is offering $10,000 reward for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the person or persons responsible for Karen's murder. Karen was 44 years old when she went missing and was ultimately found deceased. She was 5'1", 140 pounds, with shoulder-length brown hair, with gray roots and brown eyes. She was last seen by family members on Monday, May 6, 2013 at 4 p.m. in the vicinity of German and Harper Streets. Her body was discovered at 11 a.m. Tuesday, May 7th in Elmira, New York, behind the dike on Sullivan Street in the area between East 5th and Harper Streets. She may have been seen walking, talking to someone, or getting into a vehicle in Elmira, New York during the evening hours of May 6th and the early morning hours of May 7th. The Bellinger family is offering that $10,000 reward and asks to please contact Investigator Gunn at 607-737-5613. The HALT tip line at 607-271-4258. The HALT tip line can be called anonymously or email at justiceforkarencanistaro@gmail.com. So I wanted to talk a bit about this before I end with a little bit going on with what's going on in the Delphi case. But I thought this was really interesting. America's obsession with serial killers. And I don't think it's just America, you guys. I think that's just an international thing. I just think people in general are obsessed with serial killers or have an obsession. In American pop culture, there are certain names of famous or somewhat more accurately infamous people who are household names across the nation. People like Rihanna, Jon Stewart, Leonardo DiCaprio. They're valued by our society because of their achievements, social contributions, or ability to entertain us. Gossip columnists and paparazzi make a lucrative living solely because the American people care so much about what goes on in the daily lives of celebrities. I mean, look at all the people on YouTube that cover celebrities and have huge YouTube channels, millions of followers. But regardless of how little credibility these establishments have, what they're doing pales in comparison to what is happening in mainstream media outlets who fuel our society's grotesque worship of serial killers. Now, this is one person's thought on this, you guys. So don't think that this is totally my opinion on this. But like any movie actor, musician, or comedian who has gained a high level of notoriety, Charles Manson, Ed Gein, and John Wayne Gacy also have their own place in pop culture. Understandably, true crime fanatics, criminal justice scholars, and members of law enforcement have an interest in these men and women and the heinous crimes they have committed. However, thanks in large part to increasingly widespread media coverage, it has overflowed to regular households also. Just stop and look at your Netflix or Hulu and look at all the documentaries on these killers. Families turning into detailed broadcasts of their local news find themselves transfixed by the details of these killers' actions. It's almost impossible to watch the news without graphic depictions of cannibalism, serial rape, or strangulation. However, serial killers are very rare in the criminal justice system and make up a very small percentage of violent crime. Certain cases in recent years have made excellent headlines for news syndicates who are attempting to reel in audiences and secure higher ratings. The constant reports and discussions of these murders creates a paranoia in the audience where regular people who are unlikely to be victims are suddenly terrified that they will be next. This distortion between news and reality in the social construct of crime is actually called the backwards law, which explains that the information the media chooses to show you is in no way indicative of the justice system and is often, in fact, the complete opposite. Serial killers are often depicted in cinema with Silence of the Lambs, Chainsaw Massacres, being based around Ed Gein, while A Nightmare on Elm Street has its roots in the murders that were committed by the Night Stalker Richard Ramirez, and The Devil's Rejects takes its inspiration from the Bloody Bender family, who ran a hotel that no one ever checked out of. There are numerous examples like this, but essentially horror movies have carried on the fascination that was sparked by the media with the popularity of the Manson family murders in the late 60s. Another unfortunate side effect of our fascination with these murders is that the victims become marginalized, blamed, or even forgotten. When the victims are included, if at all, they aren't the vibrant people they once were, instead are reduced to just helpless caricatures. Oftentimes, in major celebrated cases, the victims are left behind in favor of the grotesque reverence of the evil people who commit particularly heinous crimes. Creating a sense that the victims are helpless also establishes a duality where victims are stereotyped and blamed instead of helped. Women in particular are told they are physically weaker than men and require martial arts training or need to carry tasers or mace or handguns to stay safe at night. But when another woman is victimized, regardless of the circumstances, the blame often shifts to her, and fingers are pointing, saying, "See, I told you, you needed mace. I bet if she'd had mace or a handgun, that wouldn't have happened to her." The media then invites talking heads onto their programs to point out what the victim did wrong and how you can be smarter and not end up another name in a district attorney's file. Serial killers are everywhere. Well, perhaps not in our neighborhood, but on our television screens, at the movie theaters, and in rows and rows of books at our local Borders or Barnes and Noble booksellers. And that is a quote from Pat Brown, criminologist. For example, Ted Bundy would lure women into his car by wearing a fake cast and asking female passerbys for help with loading his car with groceries or something similar. He would then place his victim in a vulnerable position and drive her away in that very same car. Hindsight is 20/20. So often when Bundy's victims are discussed, people make statements like, "See, she was dumb enough to help some strange man alone. I would never do that." Not only is that completely naive, but it is ultimately plays into an idealism that values the killers and their legacies over their victims. So next time you read or research or see a horror movie based on a serial killer, try to remember that these kinds of killers are a rare breed and that they are nothing more than murderers and are not worthy of our praise or adulation. Instead, try to honor the victims so we don't end up spreading the worship of monsters. And I only say, hey, Mark, thank you so much for your super chat. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. I got one more thing on Austin, guys, and then I'm going to move on to Delphi. So what began as a baseless theory has turned into a social media frenzy, one with the power to frighten the public and hamper the police investigations. At least that's what experts are telling us. Somewhere along a narrow street flanked by skyscrapers, on the edge of downtown Austin, hidden among a swirling crowd of tech bros, bachelorettes in pink cowboy hats, and pulsating dancing music, a nefarious assassin has allegedly been hard at work in recent months. Some obsessives on message boards believe that this individual is a lone wolf who carefully studies his victims before approaching them at a bar, drugging them at just the right moment. And others are convinced he's actually a she, the seductive point person for a larger team that has for years and perhaps decades been targeting the kind of healthy, handsome young men in their 20s and 30s that you'd expect to find milling around bustling nightlife areas in cities across America. Whether the killer is a single individual or part of a team, true believers maintain that somehow in recent years, they've successfully managed to lure numerous young men away from the popular nightlife district in Austin, known as Rainy Street, and into the murky waters of Lady Bird Lake, where their bodies are later recovered by police and mistaken for accidental drownings or suicides. This much is true. Since last summer, 9 bodies have been pulled from the 416-acre lake, which runs for miles through downtown Austin. But amateur investigators who have begun circulating spreadsheets with links to online news stories going back to 2008 argue the true number of suspicious deaths over the last 15 years or so is actually closer to 20. The serial killer theory offers a convenient narrative with the kind of dramatic details you'd expect to find in a Hollywood horror flick or a schlocky true crime TV show. There's only one problem. Despite a growing number of fervent believers, this narrative and much of the speculation it's predicted upon is utterly baseless. Austinites face plenty of threats at the moment, from a spike in traffic fatalities to a severe housing crisis that rivals any in the nation. A serial killer or killers slaying young men on Rainey Street, as tragic as those deaths certainly are, isn't one of them. Experts are certain. The rampant speculation has ignored that many of these bodies haven't been found near Rainey Street at all. And for those that have, there's a more likely explanation. The strip of popular bars, which are home to heavy drinking much of the week, lies a few hundred feet, or about a minute's walk maybe, from a series of darkened paths and steep inclines that overlook Lady Burke Lake. Drunken missteps don't make for as exciting a social media frenzy, however. Though far less enthralling, the likely truth is still plenty demoralizing. The only individuals actually preying upon the public are the trend-conscious content creators who seem happy to capitalize on the fears and frustrations that inevitably accompany deaths of relatively young, healthy individuals, especially those deaths that appear preventable. Earlier this month, Cron.com deftly hooked readers by pretending to pose an innocent question. Is a serial killer stalking men in Austin, Texas? Without it highlighting a shred of original evidence or credible speculation explaining why the victims' deaths might be considered suspicious, the article cited only the large numbers of people discussing the alleged killer on, you guessed it, Facebook. Last week, Fox News followed with a misleading headline that appeared as if it were lifted from a poster advertising the latest edition of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Bodies stack up in Texas City. On Saturday, the Daily Mail followed suit with a provocative headline and story that repeatedly misidentified locations, including on a map where several bodies were found. On social media, the discussion has developed further. On YouTube, online investigators with links to Cash App in their profiles have been keen to post videos of themselves wandering downtown Austin and brainstorming about the killer's motives out loud. On a channel dedicated to true crime tarot card readings, one YouTuber concluded that the men were targeted by a small, older, possible gay male killer. Others have speculated that the deaths are the work of La Llorona, the weeping woman, a vengeful Mexican spirit who is said to drag unsuspecting people, usually children, into bodies of water. On TikTok, influencers presenting themselves as true crime experts have generated engagement by posturing themselves as advocates for victims' families. There's so much going on here. And the worst part is it's accelerating. Ken Wax, who has more than 1 million followers on the platform, explained in a recent viral video. He said he's turned down offers to work for the FBI because his impact on ongoing murder investigations around the country is too great to abandon. He also claims that the deaths in Austin are the work of a group with a ringleader whom he's already identified. I can't tell you everything I know, he conveniently added. The post, which has received nearly 200,000 likes, has been picked up and recirculated by other news outlets. Many of the claims spreading online supporting the serial killer theory simply aren't true. One of the main arguments for the theory centers on the assertion that there are clear parallels among the alleged victims. Amateur investigators frequently claim the deceased men were similar looking, around the same age and build, and all had brown hair. But none of these claims have any basis. The alleged victims are not all white men, nor did they look particularly similar, despite having various shades of brown and black hair. They're around the same age, but also directly representative of the larger cohort that ends up drinking on Rainy Street each weekend. Despite the theories, there's been no evidence presented that suggests the men were all gay or lured to Lady Bird Lake using a popular singles app like Grindr. Amateur investigators have also noted that the deaths seem to abate during the pandemic, which they consider possible evidence that the killer was on lockdown. Conveniently, they ignore the fact that the bars were also on lockdown during the same period of time, limiting the number of inebriated young individuals wandering near the water. This year, only 2 of those found deceased, Jason John and Jonathan Honey, were seen in the crowded nightlife district before going missing. Based on his remains, John's family members have said they don't believe he was attacked, whereas Honey's case remains under investigation. A third deceased individual, 25-year-old Martin Gutierrez, went missing from Rainy Street in 2018, more than 4 years before the latest incidents. A fourth man recently found deceased in the lake, 30-year-old Christopher Hayes Clark, was discovered near Longhorn Dam with no signs of foul play, nearly 2 miles from Rainy Street. And another man, 40-year-old Cliff Axtell, whose body was found in early March, was last seen at Stubbs Barbecue in downtown Austin. Other bodies have been pulled from various parts of the 416-acre lake as well. The most compelling reason to believe that there's no serial killer stalking Rainy Street is the police themselves. They have never wavered from their bottom line. The drownings in Lady Bird Lake show no signs of foul play, and investigators believe several deaths were accidental and several were suicides. Successfully killing that many people by drowning without signs of physical distress is almost unimaginable. To accept the idea that a serial killer is on the prowl in downtown Austin, you must first accept the notion that local police and the Travis County Medical Examiner are engaged in a massive criminal cover-up. While police do withhold information about serial killers and later get criticized for it, Austin police are fairly reliable about not covering up that kind of information, explained Kate Winkler Dawson, at a University of Texas journalism professor, true crime author, and the host of Buried Bones, a podcast in which Dawson and a retired investigator, Paul Holes, dissect historical murder mysteries for a dedicated community of true crime fans. If Austin Police Department did believe these deaths were connected, investigators would be looking for clues and they would be panicked. If you look at the Austin bomber case a few years ago, while they did withhold some critical information, they mostly tried to get as much information to the public as soon as possible. And you're not seeing the same posture with these cases. I could be wrong, but I just don't think there's a lot there, Dawson added. Nevertheless, for weeks now, Dawson's listeners have been begging her to investigate the Lady Bird Lake deaths. Even if her investigations weren't anchored in the distant past, Dawson said she'd be reluctant to feed into a serial killer narrative that is swept across social media. In recent years, the rise of true crime buffs, their appetites whetted by an endless feast of docuseries and podcasts, have hampered police investigations more than they've helped them. For every YouTuber that spots a missing vehicle and then posts their findings online, as happened in the high-profile Gabby Petito case, 2 days after the Long Island native went missing, there are countless other examples of social media detectives attacking victims with online harassment or falsely labeling someone a murderer. In their rush to solve a crime, Dawson points out true crime fans have been known to overwhelm investigators with unrelated tips or turn on them entirely for not following up on those tips. The tips right now have run so rampant that even the admins of the 83,000 person Facebook page dedicated to uncovering the so-called Rainy Street Ripper have been reported to police. At least one of them, a stay-at-home mother dedicated to advocating on behalf of the victims' families, doesn't even live in Austin, Texas. This is a perfect storm of people wanting a mystery and something to dig into at a time when we have a certain level of mistrust with law enforcement and a simultaneous post-pandemic desire for connection. When someone on YouTube or Facebook shares your point of view about something as important as victims of crime, you automatically feel a connection. The same way two diehard sports fans rooting for the same team do. Until recently, of course, Austin had a professional sports team. For the past decade, and especially since the pandemic, the city's growth has turned what was once a tight-knit community into the kind of crowded, anonymous place that one could imagine a serial killer targeting. If there's one upside to the outpouring of interest in the alleged Rainy Street Ripper, it's that so many Austinites still care about the safety of their community and the well-being of their fellow residents, even those who are just passing through town. Unfortunately, it's taken an imaginary killer and a handful of tragic deaths to bring that to the surface. And that hang on, guys. I just closed my screen. I thought that was that was written by Peter Hawley of Texas Monthly. And I thought that was a pretty interesting article. Hey, Deb, how are you? Hey, CJK, how are you? Good to see you. Hey, Mandy Ray, good to see you too. Bye, Mark. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great rest of your day. I thought it was really good to share that with you guys because it talks about YouTubers, it talks about Facebookers, it talks about all of us in true crime that cover all of these cases. And there is a opinion out there that we do more harm than good. And I think that can very easily be true if we're not careful in how we go about it. So, and I always want to keep that possibility out there, you know, in the hearts of people's minds that are not only watching the content and taking that content in, but also those of us who are making it. We need to keep that in the forefronts of our mind. Okay, guys, hang on a second. I need to pull something up here. Ugh. So getting on to Delphi. I'm sorry, guys. I know everybody's like, she said she was going to talk about Delphi. She said she was going to talk about Delphi. But I keep it till the end because if I start talking about it, that's all we'd get through. We wouldn't get to anything else because it would all just be Delphi. although there's not that much to really talk about right now with Delphi. But there has been some action or movement in Richard Allen's case. So I just wanted you guys to see this or to hear this. So there has been a motion filed by Richard Allen to reconsider and request a due process hearing. It sounds to me like they want him in court. They want the trial, is what it sounds like to me. There was a request placed. These petitions were filed all on the same, or these motions or petitions were filed on the same day. These were all entered into his My Case on May 3rd. There was a verified request to prohibit public access to a court record by Richard Allen. There was a motion to quash a subpoena filed by Richard Allen. It doesn't tell us which subpoena. There was another motion to quash a subpoena. Another one, let's see, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 motions to quash subpoenas, and another verified request to prohibit public access to a court record. And those all happened on the 3rd. But the one that caught my mind, hold on one second, I want to pull something else up. The most was the due process one. Because that one will be big. Give me just a minute here. I'm just waiting for this file to open for me. So there was the last thing that happened on the 4th of May was the verified motion to reconsider and request for due process hearing. And that means that I want to make sure I get that I go through this for you guys. So basically, there are 3 requirements for due process when it comes to criminal court proceedings. And it's basically, number one, at the minimum, it requires that the process requires at a minimum notice and an opportunity to be heard and an impartial tribunal. So if you are a person in a criminal case in court, and due process means that you get to be notified, you get an opportunity to be heard, and you get an impartial tribunal to kind of go over everything, which would be your jury trial. And then there's violations of these due process laws. A violation of due process would be anything that includes depriving the person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And that violation would be a law enforcement searching an individual's property without a warrant. That is an example of violating due process. And due process is something that's found under the 14th Amendment of our Constitution. And there's procedural due process and substantive due process. And so the easiest way to explain it is when a citizen is being arrested for a crime, they must be given notice of the crime they're being charged for. They have to be given notice when the court case is going to be held, and they have to be given the rights to their attorney. Now, what does it mean when Richard Allen is requesting a due process hearing? It's kind of like a courtroom trial. Both sides are can call witnesses, give evidence, make legal arguments, and let's see. It's really kind of crazy, guys. I was looking something up and my computer's stuck on it. This could have due process could have something to do with discovery and the inspection of it. Again, this could be the fact that Richard Allen is not getting access to his discovery that his attorneys have tried to, get to him. Hey, Sierra, how are you? Good to see you. Hey, Chair K, how are you? Good to see you. Hey, Miracle Hearts too. How are you? So there's a lot of things that this could mean, and we're not really sure yet what they're actually talking about. But we can certainly, like I said, try to figure out what are the different things. But due process is something that he is constitutionally required to have. And if they're having a hearing on due process, hold on. And basically, it's probably they're going to argue that he is not being fairly and equally treated based upon everything that we've known up to now, and they're requesting a hearing on it. They want the opportunity to be heard. And both sides will be there, and they will present to the court. Richard Allen's attorneys will basically give what their reason is, why they're there for due process. What do they feel is being violated? What do they feel is not being done that should be being done for Richard Allen? And then the prosecution will have a rebuttal, a chance to answer to those. And why is it so important? Because due process is incredibly important in our judicial system, because it affords every defendant certain rights during criminal justice proceedings. And if the prosecutor violates any of these protections, the court can dismiss the charges against the defendant or overturn a conviction that has already occurred. Due process is so important. And the Fourth Amendment right against unlawful search and seizure, the right to a trial by a jury, the right to an attorney, and freedoms from self-incrimination, these are all examples central to procedural due process. And the Sixth Amendment guarantees the right of criminal defendants the right to the public trial without any unnecessary delay. The right to an impartial jury, and the right to know your accusers and the nature of the evidence against you. And we all talked about that when the probable cause affidavit was sealed. And there are 5 elements of due process. Equality, the system must not discriminate procedurally between parties. Economy, the cost of access to the system must not be a barrier to its use or operate to the disadvantage of one or the other parties, which is why he was given a court-appointed attorney, because he couldn't afford one. Expedition, evidence, and equity. And so when I said that there were the 2 types of due process, substantive and procedural. Substantive due process is there to ensure that you have a legitimate reason to take legal action, such as sufficient evidence to arrest someone for a crime. And then the procedural is following the legal procedures. And it is important to them. And so they have to be able to call witnesses in their defense. They have to be able to look at all the evidence against them. We're talking about all of the discovery and things like that. So that's probably what this is all about. I have a feeling that the motion to reconsider and request for due process hearing is the fact that they want to talk about him not getting all of his discovery in a timely fashion. But that's pretty much all that's happening and we're just going to have to wait and see. You know, I don't know. I would assume that they had enough forethought to get a warrant. I don't think that that's what this is about at all. We would have heard about this by now if it was that. So I don't think that that's it at all. Good night, Dave. Have a good rest of your day, please. So, but anyway, guys, that's the show for today. Like I said to you guys earlier when I started, I wasn't sure what day I was going to do this, but I did kind of decide that this was going to be Tuesdays is going to be my day to go during the day for everybody. I'm going to end the show with sharing this. Libby, sorry, is a sweet picture of Libby and Kelsey. I love this picture of them. But Kelsey posted this as far as the picture. This was in an article that she did, but she did post on Twitter that she missed all of us and that she can't wait to catch up. But basically, this is her pregnant, sitting by a lake, and she's obviously reading, and they're just having a family day. He's fishing, and she's just kind of, relaxing, becoming a new mom. But she shared with the son that, she was pregnant. And one of the things that she said was, I have always said I was going to take a much needed break after an arrest was made. I never expected to spend it preparing to become a family of 3. It's been such a blessing to have this time. Thank you for being here and sticking by me through all of it. I appreciate all of you so much. And I just wanted to end with that because we all know what Kelsey has been through on social media, especially, and how she's been, thrown under the bus by so many. And I am glad that she took the time off of social media for herself and her new family. And, she's going to be a mother now, and she's growing this baby, and she doesn't need the stress of the daily grind of social media. She had a very active Twitter presence. She was helping a lot on other cases and getting victims' names out there and helping other family members. So I just wanted to end it with this because I think that this is a uplifting and happy moment for her and for the entire German family. And the Patty family. I'm so happy for them to be able to celebrate this. I do believe she's due in August. And so it's coming fast. And it'll be a bittersweet moment for her because she won't get to share it again with her sister. But still, all in all, it's a wonderful thing. And I'm happy for her. I can't say enough. She's been through too much and so much. But it's so good to see all of you. Hey, Deb, how are you doing? I know. I can't wait either. I just am really excited to see this baby and everything. Hi, Shauna. How are you? Good to see you. Welcome. But yeah. So I am going to hop off here again. I got stuff I need to get done, but you know what, guys? I actually liked coming on during the day. It gives me something to look forward to during the day. Deb, I think I sent you, I'm positive I think I sent you an email. If not, I was thinking of sending you an email about Thursday night and if you were available on Thursday night or not. So you have to let me know if you can come on Thursday night or if you're busy. And it's fine if you are. I just wanted to give you the invite. And I don't want to bother you because I know you're working. But yeah, guys, my first live stream during the day. So, we'll see how it goes. You guys all have the rest of your day. I hope it's a good one. And the rest of your week, I will see you guys all on Thursday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. And thank you again for being here and sticking with me and enjoying Behind the Crime Door. And for everyone who watches the replay, I appreciate you as well. Thank you guys so much and have a great rest of your day.